All right, people, welcome. It is GreenFire. This afternoon we got it pretty overcast. It's only 50-some degrees, so we're having the lowest high temperature since last May 20th. So we've had like 4 or 5 months of temperatures above 54 degrees. So this is the first time since May 20th that it's 54 or lower. So hopefully people are warm in wherever you're at, in your apartment, your home, wherever you might be, with your cozy loved one or partner, or just cozying up to a nice book or movie or whatever. May you have a golden eternity of this hour, and may we share some real storytelling this hour. This particular journey is going to be around the Indigenous Peoples Day. I just call it Indigena. October 12th is when Columbus has supposedly landed in the New World and discovered America. Well, that's kind of being dismantled little by little here and there, as there were only like 30 million people here when Columbus discovered America. So not to make fun of anything, but there's a revisioning of the whole Columbus Day complex. And for today, I have done my own excavation of a timeline of my own journey to help bring about the Indigenous Peoples Day. And I will give a timeline. This is going to be dedicated to all storytellers, red, yellow, black, and white, who are sitting around campfires with their grandchildren, their children, their loved ones, their grandparents, their parents. And may you kind of sit back, and this is a time of storytelling and bringing the legitimate social memory forward. And this is a form of semiotics called legitimate social memory. And everyone, everywhere, has a legitimate social memory. And the entire complex of our enterprise, or whatever you want to call it, is to tell our legitimate personal and social memory. And this particular day, dear friends, I have a very intimate, personal, social, and legitimate social memory. It's both personal and social. And as you will see, it becomes quickly planetary and interdimensional as well. If you're going to seek a vision, you have to take a step. And you take your first step of 10,000 miles is a single step. And we take this first single step today collectively together in celebration of a higher nation of who we really are. And the higher nation of who we really are is also Red Nation, the Good Red Road. And that is red, yellow, black, and white go through these hoops of all the nations. And the true United Nations began long before the United Nations. It was encoded in the Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee League of Nations. And for a deeper understanding of the separation of powers, the executive, legislative, and judicial, please contact or look up the Iroquois League of Nations, or the Haudenosaunee. I will spell it out, Haudesaunee. And that is when they buried the hatchet, so to speak, and they found the sweet medicine Decanawida taught them how to be keepers of peace instead of war makers. So in order to learn the sweet medicine story of Decanawida, please look up the Haudenosaunee and the Iroquois League of Nations. It's in a book, and it's a Bertrand Russell Tribunal put out the book called A Basic Call to Consciousness. A Basic Call to Consciousness. Look that book up. It's got more in it about what's really going on a planetary and on a North American continental scale than anything that's currently written. This goes back 10,000 years, Neolithic, Paleolithic, and it goes right on up through the times in which we live right now. And we're in such a time, dear friends. And so we bring out the heart and the hat and the joy of the storyteller. And we're going to allow the storyteller to kind of sit around this electronic campfire and be our muse. Our muse is the one that whispers in the middle of the night or in the day that there's a song that we want to sing, or a tune that we want to share, or a dance that we want to do, or a poem that we want to jot down. The muse is always whimsical in its reverie. So inviting in the whimsical muse this afternoon of the storyteller, and joyful journey of a very difficult path and ordeal. The last 500 years on this continent have been pure hell for the Native American people. And it's about time that they got their sovereignty and their rights, and whatever reparations and treaty rights that can and will be afforded to them. But most important is dignity, authenticity, sovereignty, and respect. And respect is not an easy term. Maybe reverence and respect. And through respect, we respect ourselves, we respect one another. And in loving ourselves, we're able to love one another. So one of the commandments maybe have it a little bit off. Love ourselves, love one another, love our neighbor, and respect oneself, respect ourselves, so we can respect one another. And this goes right to the heart of the treaty rights. The Native American people have not been given much respect, and this is an honor desired and designed and devoted to giving them lots of respect. And that's the journey we all want to take. For this is a new day, dear friend. This is a shifting, an anthropocentric shifting to a biocentric reality. Moving out of the Anthropocene of Columbus and that whole complex of conquistador colonization complex, and into the ecocentric and the indigenous way of being, which is ecocentric and biocentric, basically bioregional, which is circles have their meaning. The season of the cycle of the wheel, the seasonal wheel, the autumnal equinox, the seasonal wheel of each moon, and within each moon a seasonal wheel, and the four directions thereof, north, south, east, and west. We'll begin with something I just wrote, which is simply called a personal Archimedes. And I was coming over here, and this whimsical muse whispered in my ears, personal Archimedes. So I thought, all right, that'll be what I'll write, the personal Archimedes, which will be like a timeline of my own journey in the last 30 years. It's like from 1987, okay? My own journey for the last 30 years. And that's part of our storytelling today, is my own personal Archimedes, which is woven into this deeper historical context. And then the tapestry is revealed as we move through this eco-poetics here. And toward the ending, there'll be some looping back and forth. So we're going to do some time traveling, and we're definitely going to be bringing up the years. This is called Bringing Up the Years. In hippie parlance, it's a really cool tune. Indigena, red, yellow, black, and white. Personal Archimedes. When excavating a timeline, you gotta find a song line, dear friend. When we're excavating a timeline, you gotta find a song line. That's when the music starts. Well, it's Indigena Day. This is where the personal, the interpersonal, the planetary, and the interplanetary song lines interconnect in a harmonic convergence. This is where the colors of the rainbow come spinning forward, round, round, and round, in dreamer wheels, in close encounters with remarkable men, women, and being. The timeline begins in 1876, the Battle of Little Bighorn, Battle of Greasy Grass. Then, mysteriously, time currents move to 1889, 1890, in Nevada, amongst the northern Paiute, and Wovoka, a Messiah who birthed the ghost dance vision. The newest technology in 1889 and 1890 was the American railroads, and they were speeding west. That was the newest technology on the planet, were railroads, and they were speeding west through Indian country. Invisibly and surprisingly, many Indians from other nations traveled west in the summer of 1890 on the great railroads that ran right through Indian country. And little did you know that many Indians were traveling those railroads going out west to listen and to learn of the ghost dance vision. This was the northern Paiute who had this Messiah called Wovoka. His English name was Jack Wilson. And to listen and to learn of the ghost dance vision. And this vision spoke of many, many things. And many of the great nations of the Plains tribes, this was high times among the tribes, this traveling west on this new iron horse. But more than that, there was a change, and the Indians were being forced onto reservations. And so this was a chance to travel while you could before being forced onto reservations. And so this was high times among the tribes, getting out on the land. The vision spoke of a roll-up, the Wovoka's vision of the ghost dance. It spoke of a roll-up of the white man's ways. The Wasichu, who they called the Wasichu, which means one who takes more than his half. Which means one who takes more than half. That means the Wasichu. It's another name for greed. And a restoration of the ceremonies. So the vision spoke of a roll-up of the white man's ways, of the ways of greed, the one who takes more than his share. And a restoration of the ceremonies, dances, and rituals of the Indian people. The people of the Great Spirit. This was by being kind, and this was the restoration of the people of the Great Spirit, of the old ways of the Indian tribal people. This was by being kind, sharing, being courageous, living clean, walking with straight eyes, speaking with straight tongue, straight mouth, and having a pure heart and a clean crystal water's mind. This was living in the ways of the real man, the natural man. And this vision spoke of a return to these sacred ways, which was by being kind, sharing, being courageous, living clean, walking with straight eyes, speaking with straight teeth, straight tongue, having a pure heart and clean crystal water's mind. This was a roll-up vision of the ghost dance. And this ghost dance and a return to the respectful ways of the Indian ways and the natural law of the natural human, of the natural man. It was brought back, and it was brought back, this ghost dance vision, that these Indian chiefs and medicine men traveled the Iron Horse Railroad out west to northern Nevada, to northern Paiute country to listen and learn of the ghost dance vision from Wovoka. and then bringing it back along the Great Plains and the Great Prairie people of the Great Plains and then the High Plains. And it spread like wildfire, like wild prairie fire. The U.S. cavalry decided this was a deep and dark and dangerous threat, this ghost dance, this roll-up vision. And they needed to, they don't want to have this threat because it's threatening to put them away, and they're scared. Fear drives a lot of oppression. And the U.S. cavalry decided this was a dark threat and decided to stamp this insurrection right down and destroy it. The ghost dance was now being danced among the 7 Lakota nations in 1889 and the spring and summer of 1890. So this ghost dance has spread like wildfire all across the Great Plains and the High Plains country, and among the Pahasapa, the Black Hills country, and also in Oklahoma and all the Great Plains tribes. And this was now being danced among the 7 Lakota nations all through the spring, summer of 1890. And like the U.S. cavalry got wind of this and decided this was no good. We got to put this down. We got to quell this rebellion. And sure enough, 4 days after Christmas, in a bitter cold blizzard, it was brutally put down in a massacre at Wounded Knee, Pine Ridge Reservation, South Dakota, where well over 200, maybe 300 or 400 Lakota men, Oglala Lakota men, women, and children were killed, were snuffed out, were massacred by Gatling guns, by the U.S. Cavalry, the U.S. Army. December 29th, 1890, in a cold, bitterly cold blizzard. And this was what they thought was the end of the ghost dance. They thought they had quelled this threat, and now the Indians were being forced onto the reservations. And historians have thought that the Wounded Knee massacre was the end of the quote Indian Wars. Well, the wars on the white man's side, of the Army side, but on the Native American, the Indian side, they maybe not were wars. They were massacres, forms of genocide, taking their land, killing their people, and stealing, denying them their spiritual, cultural relics and ceremonies, and denying them their language, their way of being, forcing them onto reservations, cutting their hair, sending their kids off to boarding school hundreds of miles away, breaking up families, breaking up language, breaking up culture, breaking up marriages, raising children who don't know how to have parents and who don't know how to be parents themselves because they were stolen from their parents, thus breaking that lineage of parent-child bond. Now you can imagine if this happened to you. They forced you away from your parents and sent you off to a boarding school 200-300 miles from home, never to see your family except on when school was out and holidays, which was 8-9 months apart at least, and maybe longer. Well, that was the beginning of what they call the end of the Indian Wars, and Indians were forced onto reservations by the U.S. Army. It was not voluntarily. It was by force. We're talking brute force. All right, and then a generation or two go by. Around 1950, a book comes out, and this book is called Black Elk Speaks. This was the first book to really shed light on Lakota Oglala culture. I mean real light, in a human loving kindness way of a cultural inheritance of a deep culture, a deep philosophy, a deep science, a deep spirituality. And the book was called Black Elk Speaks. It's about an Oglala Lakota holy man, a medicine healer, and a wisdom keeper. It is a New Testament scripture among the plains and natural peoples. It is the New Testament scripture among the plains and natural peoples. Not to be discounted, this is considered New Testament scripture in Turtle Island. That's the Native American name from North America. Good to find out what the name of this real continent is. It's called Turtle Island. And this book was considered a messianic vision, and it had a message within, had many visions, many teachings from elders in the other world. And not only elders, but holy horses in the spirit world. And Black Elk would travel to the spirit world and have council lodge in the council lodges and counsel and be given visions and spirit teachings by the elders and sometimes the animal beings like horses, horse beings. And another generation passes. In the early 1970s, the American Indian movement is formed. So like 1950, the book Black Elk, which is a seminal, it's kind of like Moses comes down from the mountain with the tablets. Well, here comes down from the mountain of the Black Hills, because this book, just like Moses' tablets, called Black Elk Speaks. And the stone people speak. They talk about Hamblekia, Inipi, Sweat Lodge ceremony, vision quest, all kinds of medicine keepers and vision and spirit beings, spirit ways, and spirit ceremonies, many ceremonies. That's why it's considered the scripture, the New Testament of Turtle Island. And that was 1950. So 1950, another generation passes. In the early 1970s, the American Indian movement is found and is formed by Dennis Banks, the woman, Thunderhawk is her name. It's formed by Leonard Peltier as well, Russell Means, Dennis Banks, and others. Betancourt. Another generation passes, Robert Robideau. In the early 1970s, the American Indian movement is formed, and quickly followed by Women of All Red Nations. That's Anita Thunderhawk and other women who form Women of All Red Nations, Warren and American Indian Movement AIM. And these form a new spiritual movement among the Lakota Oglala, as well as other Native American across the country. And nations clear across Turtle Island. And on November 18th, 1969, is the first occupation of Alcatraz by Native American people. That was occupation. Thanksgiving, or around there, November 18th, 1969. Many were Vietnam War veterans in this AIM movement, American Indian movement. Then there was a camp up in Lakota country at Raymond Yellow Thunder Camp. And Women of All Red Nations and AIM was there. It was a big gathering, the Raymond Yellow Thunder Camp. And they were fighting for their treaty rights as well as their indigenous way of being. It was a spiritual gathering. Then there was a siege at Wounded Knee. from 1974 to 1975. This is part of and also separate from the Raymond Yellow Thunder camp. Was the siege of Wounded Knee, which was like they having this camp here, reclaiming their land and their treaty rights. And up comes the federales and the goon squads, from the FBI to the local goon squads of Dick. Don't forget good old Dick Nixon and the local Dick Nelson, or I think that's his name, Dick Nelson. He's like the Oreo, only he'd be red on the outside and white on the inside. Think of something red on the outside and white on the inside. That's what this Dick Wilson would be. And this goon squad, where the tribal police were holding all these American Indian movement and women of all red nations in a siege that lasted 74 days. A long time. Lots of gunfire. A lot of people were killed. Lots of people were killed. There's a lot of gunfire. And the siege at Wounded Knee was from 1974 to 1975. And then a couple of FBI agents, because the FBI was involved with local sheriffs and who knows, all the way down to, like I say, the tribal police, the goon squads of Dick Wilson. And then after these two FBI agents were killed, there was a frame-up of Leonard Peltier, who really didn't do it. And he was the frame-up for killing two FBI agents in a standoff at Wounded Knee. Then Leonard goes, they frame Leonard up and they throw him into the Deep Six. And that's called Fort Leavenworth. Then in 1991, on October 30th, an eight-car semi-truck, 18-wheeler with a big Herky Hawkeye logo on it, as a caravan started in Burlington at the children down there, who boxed up a lot of boxes of clothing and lots of clothing and blankets. And the UAW sponsored this event. It was Hope Haven down in Burlington, where differently abled children were boxing things together and putting them on this semi-truck with a Hawkeye logo on it. And so they loaded it up down in Burlington on the Mississippi River. We took that caravan with that 18-wheeler over to Des Moines, near Adventureland, and the UAW people there loaded up a lot more into that semi. And then we took that semi up the Missouri River up to Sioux City, and the UAW people up there finished loading up that semi. It was a river to river, land between two rivers, river of dreams, and the good people, good-hearted working class people of Iowa, with the handicapped and this differently abled people, putting together this wonderful Herky Hawkeye 18-wheeler semi-truck loaded with clothing, blankets, food for the Native Americans. And we had like an 8 or 9 car caravan along with this Hawkeye truck. And so we took this caravan all the way out to Lakota, which is Black Hills country, and we had a giveaway from Iowa and we went to Porcupine on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And that was October 31st, 1991. October 30th, 1991. And this was, and so that was the giveaway. And then coming back from the giveaway, I came back home, and my sister and my aunt came out on the front porch and said, "Your dad died this morning." That was the biggest loss in my life. Up to that time, well, my brother was killed too, so that was the second biggest loss in my life. That was after this giveaway. I just got home. So we had a second giveaway right around Christmas. And we went up to Indian Health Service at Porcupine, had another giveaway, did some sweat lodge ceremonies, and then stopped at Wounded Knee, and stopped at the cemetery, the graveyard, and went in and had some extended quiet silence. And then in the spring, sometimes in your life you have to do something that's bigger than your own truth. So in the spring, there was an Earth First action on Earth Day, April 24th. And it was to shut down the Avenue of the Sinners as it raped an estuary near the George Wythe Park in Cedar Falls, Iowa on April 24th, 1992. And instead of the Avenue of the Sinners, it's Avenue of the Saints, it's the Avenue of the Sinners. And the corridor is just one big shithouse, stench-filled drench. You know what a drainage ditch is? Well, that's what the corridor is. It stinks to high heaven. Well, this Earth First action on Earth Day, April 24th, 1992, was the shutting down of the Avenue of the Sinners as it had raped and clear-cut a forest and raped an estuary near George Wythe Park, Cedar Falls, Iowa. So this Earth First action in Iowa history was necessary. It was April 24th, 1992. Then from Columbus Circle, the United Nations, New York City, begins a walk across America in the spring of 1992. As a walk across America for Mother Earth, which is a reconciliation and a healing walk for genocide and massacre of Indian peoples all across Turtle Island for the last 500 years, since 1492. So this walk across America for Mother Earth began at the Columbus Circle, United Nations in New York City. This walk of reconciliation and healing for the genocide and massacre of Indian peoples across Turtle Island since 1492 was stopping at sacred places of specific horror for sweat lodges, prayers, sacred pipe ceremonies, and other ceremonies of healing and reconciliation. And this walk got all the way out to the Missouri River on May 29th, 1992. And this was the jump-off point for the West, here at the Missouri River near Kansas City. Lake Jacomo Park, Missouri, Jackson County, Missouri, Lake Jacomo Park, Missouri, right outside of Kansas City. There was a midnight sweat lodge ceremony. And then it was on to Leavenworth. And here we were joined by members of the American Indian movement who had come down from South Dakota, including Leonard Peltier's mother and some of his children. And then on to Leavenworth for a 3-day, 24-hour vigil for Leonard Peltier by the American Indian movement and the Walk Across America, a non-stop vigil in front of Leavenworth Prison for 24 hours, 2-hour shifts for 72 hours. And there we held council fire down between the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe railroad tracks and the Missouri River in a peace camp. As there I met Leonard Peltier's mother and was given many special teachings and blessings, spiritual teachings about letting that New Testament talk to your heart, and learning and the forgiveness ceremony. The forgiveness ceremony is very powerful. And then across Kansas in places of horror and forced relocation, we walked from On the walk across America after the 72-hour vigil at Fort Leavenworth, then we walked to Lawrence, and then Junction City and Fort Riley and Manhattan and the University of Kansas and Kansas State. But we were walking in a medicine way. It was a walking of forgiveness of the genocide and massacre of Native Americans. We were doing healing ceremonies all along the way, pipe ceremonies, sweat lodges, walking ceremonies, walking with a sacred staff. And this was also forced relocation. So we walked to Fort Riley, and then Fort Hays and Westward Ho, down 40 highway, then down a 2-lane asphalt, and then a path, and then crossing the Oregon Trail, and then a Pioneer Trail and a dust path, and then the Butterfield Trail, heading west, past the 100th Meridian and the High Plains Drifter, the Smoky Hills Country, the Flint Hills Country, and trekking the thin trails. Then the semi-arid desert of the High Plains, and that was clear out past Hays and out West clear out western Kansas, Waukene, way out there, Oakley, trekking the thin trails where the contrails and the thin trails are indiscernible. And then the semi-arid desert of the High Plains, past the 100th Meridian, and then we came upon the split, scattered, all fall down spirit country. The split, scattered, all fall down spirit country. The split, scattered, all fall down spirit country. The Sand Creek Massacre of eastern Colorado. The split, scattered, all fall down spirit country of Sand Creek Massacre, eastern Colorado, November 29th, 1864. Now, this is the first healing ceremony return. Summer solstice, June 1992. Almost 130 years, 128 years. Took 128 years to return to this place of the most obscene savagery done by Colonel Shivington and the Colorado Methodists and volunteers. And Colonel Shivington was a Methodist minister, and he was the leader of this Hitler-type massacre of unspeakable violence, obscenity. And so this is the first healing ceremony return on summer solstice, June 1992, in this walk across America for Mother Earth. A healing walk and reconciliation for the genocide and massacre of Indian peoples. And the summer solstice, June 1992, we came upon the split, scattered, all fall down in 4 directions spirit country, the Sand Creek Massacre. This is the first healing ceremony, and this is a summer solstice, 1992. And we did a double ring ceremony in the place of the massacre in the washes of Sand Creek. And we did a double ring ceremony where we did around twice. We did a figure 8 loop twice, and we looked into each other's eyes. And each one of us took some spiritual object that was very sacred to us, and we buried it there in the heart of the Sand Creek Massacre. And we were on our knees crying, many of us. and we were crying very much. And we looked up into this medicine man. Carson was his name. He had his amazing blue eyes in this Colorado blue sky, turquoise blue sky. And he said, you know, we were crying for a vision and realized we left our hearts there at Sand Creek. And he says, now we walk on. And we walked on up into the high country to the Rainbow Gathering and the July 4th Cherry Festival in Paonia, Western Slope, Rocky Mountain High, on the western side of the Rocky Mountains Continental Divide. In Paonia, went up to the Rainbow Gathering for July 4th. This was the gathering of the tribes of living light. And this was July 4th. And then for another fortnight till July 18th, July 20th, we walked through the level 5 high water, the rapids of level 5, rapid level 5 up in Salida and also West Cliff. We did a full moon walk through the canyons at night with guitars and so forth. And we walked into West Cliff and then down to a little town near La Vida Pass. Near La Vida Pass, from the high country, and one was Earth Family Farm up there, and across was the Wolf Mission, which is raising wolves for the biodiversity in the Rocky Mountains. And we stopped at Earth Family Farm just below La Vida Pass in the Sangre de Cristo in the Huerfano Mountains, Huerfano Valley in the Sangre de Cristo. And in this real sense, it means the blood of Christ. And having been to Sand Creek and then to the Rainbow Gathering, we certainly were in the blood of Christ. Without knowing it, we were washed in the blood of Christ, being Huerfanos, orphans, far from home. And this little town is just near La Vida Pass. So West Cliff and so on to La Vida Pass, Earth Family Farm. That was after the July 4th Cherry Festival, where we went up into the high country, the Rainbow Gathering, for celebration after walking the ordeal of the Sand Creek Massacre. We went up to high country for a high country Sundance powwow, Rainbow Gathering celebration at the Paonia on the western slope of the Continental Divide up in the high country at 10,000 feet. And then this was the gathering of the tribes of living light. Then there was a descent onto the prairie heartland. After Wolf Creek Farm, or Earth Family Farm at Gardner, Colorado, there was a descent onto the prairie heartland for 2 months. 2.5 moons have passed on this 1992 Walk Across America for Mother Earth. There was a descent onto the prairie heartland up here in Iowa country, for 2.5 moons that passed. Then onto the Colorado Plateau and the Great Basin and the Amargosa Desert, the Amargosa Desert in southern Nevada, in the Great Basin country of the Amargosa Desert. And we all met in Las Vegas at the Federal Building. We all met up and we walked from the Federal Building where the FBI was. And it was a 6-day walk out into the valley, Death Valley, near Amargosa Desert, into Nehweh Segovia, which is the name, the Western Shoshone name for their land, which was encoded forever in the Treaty of Ruby Valley of 1864. And in the Treaty of Ruby Valley of 1864, all of the Death Valley, all of Area 1, all of the Department of Energy, Area 51, that whole area is in Western Shoshone Nation, called Nehweh Segovia, which sovereign and made law in the Treaty of Ruby Valley of 1864. It's never been abrogated. So we walked from the FBI federal building out into the desert of Death Valley and the Amargosa Desert, up Highway US 95 north. For 6 days we walked in the desert. And as we were walking in the desert, it was hot, but we kept walking in that hot. It was October now. By the time it was a little bit like October 6th, I think. Well, we walked all day through the sun, and we looked up on the sides of the mountains and the arroyos of the Amargosa Desert. Their native Shoshone and young men were drumming and dancing and cheering us on, with drumming us on down the road. You're walking for us, the heartbeat of planet Mother Earth, the planet drum. So every drum beat that they hit helped us walk further in the hot desert. We walked out into the desert, clear out, I don't know, 70, 80 miles, 60, 70 miles from Las Vegas, out past Cactus Springs, and then Indian Springs, which is also the name of an Air Force base, which is called Creech Air Force Base now, which is the home of drone bombing of people all over the planet. And the people who drop the bombs from these drones are sitting in little cubicles and computer cubicles with their joysticks, picking out their human targets, just like the massacre at Sand Creek, and then dropping, without people knowing it, unknowingly, little exosets or drone bombs, real bombs on people. Most of it's civilians. A lot of wedding parties, people are killed. A lot of birth parties, but the knowledge of drones above their heads is a psychological black ops operation, because psychologically people, that is psychological warfare. When you got a drone over your head, you're totally oppressed. You can't have a free thought anywhere. There's no free world there for you. And all these operations, black ops, drones, predator bombings of innocent people in the Middle East and elsewhere around the earth, are done out here in the desert at Indian Springs. Used to be Indian Springs Air Force, it's now Creech Air Force Base. The name says it all. Creech Air Force Base. That's where they bombed the living shit into oblivion people halfway around the planet without leaving their easy seat, going home to their wife or husband for dinner at night. But there's another twist to this. The people who are doing the bombing here at Creech Air Force Base are now suffering psychoses and dementia and depressions beyond words of their guilt after doing this for a while. They're suffering tremendously traumatic stress, depression that bothers them night and day. So, dear friends, we're all in this together, and there, but for the grace of God, I could be the person being bombed, or I could be the person doing the bombing. So let's pray for all of us. The people who are doing the bombing need prayers too. Got to shut down the bombing, stop the bombing. But as human beings, what that does to their soul, they need prayers too. So let's pray for the cessation of suffering of all human beings through this, and shut down drones forever. Shut down drone secret black ops bombing forever. Not in our name. Not in our name. So that's Creech Air Force Base. So that's modern day version of the Sand Creek Massacre. Daily. Through these black op drone, predator drones. Okay. So we walk past Cactus Springs. And at Cactus Springs, there is a goddess temple in the desert devoted to the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, who is a goddess of peace and healing. And when we were there, they had just formed, I believe, the women had just formed a healing temple there, so we camped there the night. It was a crystal temple, a goddess temple, but for more than anything, it was a healing temple out in the middle of the desert. It is still there, and you can still go there to be healed. It's called Sekhmet, Goddess Sekhmet Temple. It's at Cactus Springs, and we went there for healing as we were walking along. It was intergenerational, but ecumenical, interdenominational for sure, from Native Americans to Egyptians in the desert. Think about that. Christ in the desert. We had a Seder in the desert, so we had the Jewish ceremony. We had Christ in the desert with a Sangre de Cristo, the blood of Christ, and we had the Native American healing of the Western Shoshone, and the Dine, and the Hopi, and the Paiute, a blessing of many tribes and many nations, and rainbow waves of prophecy and colors in convergence. As we walk down the Mylar Highway, stretching out an infinity loop sign for the future 7th generation yet to come. And then to this gathering of the tribes of living light, and then into Newe Segovia, we walked into Cactus Spring, a Sekhmet, the goddess temple in the desert. And so that was the Women's News Network who put that together out of Houston, Texas. So thank you all you women who bought the land out there. That's a healing. It's healing for everyone. It's not just for gender specific. Any peace person is welcome there. And so then on beyond Cactus Springs, and then we come down the road, and then there's the Peace Encampment Area 1, which is the Department of Energy Area 1. And then there's a Peace Encampment right across the way there. And out of Area 1, some people went right down to the cattle guard at the nuclear test site and walked across the cattle guard and got arrested. They walked right out of the walked right across the cattle guard and walked across it and got arrested. And then others went up to the peace camp. But that was after a 7-day walk in the Death Valley Desert out to the nuclear test site and the Western Shoshone Nation. So that was quite an entrance into the Area 1 in Western Shoshone Nation. Once the Department of Energy claims it's theirs, but the Treaty of Ruby Valley of 1864 says no. This treaty has not been abrogated, and this is Native American Western Shoshone Nation. This is sovereign treaty here. So that's where you've got Babylon man, and then you've got Western Shoshone man, and they're saying, oh no, we have a right to do nuclear bombs here. And Western Shoshone says, no, this is our land. We've never given it up. And so that's the Treaty of Ruby Valley, and that's what we're there to do, to reclaim our land, reclaim the land. And so we get out there, and like I said, many people were arrested, and Many people were arrested, and then we went up to our peace encampment and we had put up our tents. We had our tents and community tents and a big kitchen, and we had an atomic cafe, and we had Clan Dyken came out from Los Angeles and San Francisco and played in the desert. Many artists came out and played music all night. We had all night dancing. And we had sunrise ceremonies at dawn with Corbin Harney, the medicine elder, the medicine man. We had pipe ceremonies. And we did a lot of night walks through the desert. Plus, we set up a crystal medicine wheel up on this butte overlooking the peace encampment near Area 1, near Mercury on US 95 going north out of Las Vegas. And so this was, we got there, and this was, like I said, we walked in 6 days in the Death Valley in Neway, Segovia, and we arrived at the peace encampment. It was Area 1 of the nuclear test site. And then we were there for days of direct action, reclaiming our land for the Western Shoshone of Neway, Segovia. We were doing sunrise ceremonies. We did sweat lodges and sacred pipe ceremonies. And Bill Rossi played a lot of, brought out his guitar and played a lot of country western. We had country western swing. So we had dancing in the desert of our lives out there. In the middle of the nuclear bombing area. 980 nuclear bombs had gone off in that area. And here we were to shut it down and reclaim our land from the darkness on earth, better known as the Department of Energy. And so we got there on October 12th, 1992, 500 years to the day that Columbus landed in America. And thus, on 500 years to the day, it was a roll-up ceremony, just like Wovoka's Ghost Dance Vision out of the Northern Paiute. And we were thus creating a moratorium on all nuclear bomb testing after 990 nuclear bombs had gone off. Now this was the beginning of the roll-up of Wovoka's Ghost Dance Vision. His vision was in 1890, but this was the year 1992, so this was 100 years after the Ghost Dance Vision, but 500 years to the day that Columbus landed in the New World. And this was the beginning of the roll-up of Wovoka's vision, or the Ghost Dance Vision. What you're getting here is a lot of koans, so each one of these is a little symbol, a little nugget of gold for you to mine and go deep into your own collective unconscious and dig and poke around and find your own connections to all this, because this is the spirit of the American truth in the American way being handed and given to you on the storytelling day of Columbus Day. There's a big time story, 500 years here. So this is the beginning of the roll-up of Wovoka's vision, and this was the year, and then in the year 2000, this was 1992. So 8 years later, after 8 years on probation for Earth First actions, in the year 2000, the Sand Creek was declared a national monument ceremony for all people, for all time. And so what was the most painful place for Native Americans to go is now a national monument. And in July, in Pahasap in the Black Hills, the Black Elk Park was named, and the center of all Lakota spiritual cosmology, the center of the world. And then on October 9th, 2017, just a week ago, we were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for anti-nuclear activity. So you're looking at a member of one of the Nobel Peace Prize winners. But to all you anti-nuke people, you were all Nobel Peace Prize winners. So this is the beginning of a new roll-up. Pilamia Mitakuyas, and blessings for the 7th generation yet to come. And you can do your part to have a nuclear-free planet and reclaim Indigenous Day in your own Indigenous way. Peace to you and yours. Thank you.